welcome to Expanding Consciousness with your host, myself, Anjula. And I'm very, very excited to be here today with Nassim Haramein, who is a physicist and the research director at the Resonance Project Foundation. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Now, when I started looking in your work, it comes across as pretty intense, but I feel that there's...
I'm an intense kind of guy.
Yeah, we like it though, because there's so much detail in it, but I feel that there's also a simplicity behind it. So let's just start off with the unified field theory that you've come to. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I found a solution to unify gravity with quantum physics. So basically we have two sets of framework to describe the big stuff and the small stuff in the universe. The big stuff is described with gravitational equations from Einstein equations, and the small stuff is described with quantum theory, which describe molecular, atomic, and subatomic particle, so the small stuff. The thing is that the big stuff is made out of the small stuff. So there must be an equation that connects the two. And for almost 100 years, people have been looking for an equation like that since Einstein. And Einstein worked on it for the rest of his life after he wrote his gravitational equations. And you know, it's been really difficult because the equations that describe gravity describe space-time as a smooth net structure, like the surface of a trampoline being bent by a mass, you know, like if you put a big ball in the middle of a trampoline, it would bend. And another ball would appear to be attracted because it's rolling on that curvature, right? Called curvature of space-time. But quantum physics describe everything being little quantities, little packets of energy that have a finite, you know, linear function. Like, so they're discrete, they're not smooth. It's not smooth, it's granular. And so the two don't agree with each other. And so it's been a long journey to try to get gravity to be acceptable or to be integrated with quantum physics, so quantum gravity. And I found that actually the structure of the space-time is smooth only if you look from a far distance, but if you look really, really closely, it actually is very teeny granulates, really teeny packets of energy that we call Planck energy, and or Planck entities, or Planck oscillators. And these little Planck things, they're little packets of electromagnetic waves that are billions of times smaller than the atoms, make up this, like a fluid, you know, like water is made out of molecules and atoms and stuff. So it's like a fluid of these little Plancks that are making up the structure of space-time.
So this is, when I was looking at some of your work, and this is where the spiral comes into it, because it's, like you said, it's like the smooth and it looks like it goes this way, but it's almost like, what I feel like is like maybe it's a shift in perspective almost, that then you have a different perspective and you can actually see that that's a different angle of viewing that spiral. Is that correct?
Right. Like imagine if you were in a tub and like in your bath, and you had a rubber ducky, right?
I do.
You do? Oh, good. They're great. I love rubber duckies. And you pull the plug, right? If your rubber ducky is over there, it's not gonna, you know, because water over there is kind of incoherent and nothing is happening over there, the rubber ducky doesn't see anything. But if you bring the rubber ducky close to where the drain is, then it will start to spiral, right? It will start to orbit, and it will look like it's attracted to something, right? Like a gravitational field. And if you look at the surface of water, it's bending towards the drain. That's what Einstein described. He described the bending of space-time creating a gravitational effect. Well, my equation says, yeah, it is bending like that, but it's because all the little water particles are spinning together in a coherent manner, co-moving in a coherent manner that makes the surface effect of the curve. And that, so the curve is secondary to actually the little particles making the spin. In the case of my equation, it's the particles are not particles of water, they're these little packets of energy that we call Planck that are spinning, little Planck spherical units that are spinning together like billions of them that makes up a black hole, for instance. Yeah. And it gives the correct answer for the mass of the black hole. And so then I took that same equation and applied it to a proton, to the nucleus of an atom, and it gave the correct answer for the proton. In fact, it gave a more accurate answer than the standard model of physics give relative to what is being measured in the laboratory as far as the radius of the proton. So it actually is extremely accurate. You might have seen that in Science magazine in the last few years. Is our universe holographic and all this? And that's because there's a solution to black hole that was given by some of the top physicists that were looking at trying to figure out what happens to information when it falls into a black hole. And they concluded that the information actually was holographically imprinted on the surface of the black hole as it fell in, so it wasn't lost. And this, they called it the holographic principle. And this imprint that they described it as every little bit of information being one of those little Planck oscillators on the surface of the black hole. So that led me eventually to going, wait a minute, what about the information that's inside the black hole? If the Plancks are inside the black hole, you know, what is the relationship between the inside information and the surface information? And when I did the relationship, the ratio between the two, I got the exact mass of the black hole. And so that's what led to this discovery. If Einstein would have had black holes, if Einstein would have had, you know, all the information we have today, I'm sure that he would have solved it immediately. But although Einstein's equation predicted black hole, Einstein himself didn't believe they would exist.
So it's before the time of the confirmation.
That's right, of the black holes. And so, you know, and so it was completely insane to think that there would be black holes out there at the time. And actually, even when I started in physics and I was talking in a physics conference about black holes, and at the time it was even only 25 years ago, it was unsure if they even existed at the time. And I was trying to tell them we were going to find black holes at the center of all galaxies, which was eventually confirmed, but at the time it was erratic to actually even think that that would be true, because they didn't even think that black holes existed, or if they existed, maybe they were very, very rare. And so to think that they were at the center of all galaxies was crazy, and to think that they're at the center of atoms as little protons, which what my equation confirms, is still very hard for people to swallow. Although lately some of the best physicists on the planet have started to talk that way. Like there's a lecture that was given in Stanford by one of the most prominent physicists that was asked that question, probably from a student that studied my work, if, you know, because he was talking about all this information and surface of horizon of black holes. He was asked if that meant that subatomic particles were mini black holes, and he said, well, there's no sharp distinction between black holes and particles. So you know, they're starting to kind of come to these conclusions as well.
I consider you a very forward-thinking, like a thought leader in research, like, you know, more advanced soul, bringing certain information in. but it's met some resistance. Like you're ahead of it feels like you're ahead of the time of the collective culture, at least, right?
Right.
So how has that been for you, like your journey in it?
It's been really difficult.
Yeah.
I've had lots of tears. It's been, I was early on. I was kicked out of physics conference. I was, I've been yelled at. I've been mooned. Yes. It's been a long journey, and it's still difficult. I still get censored. It's very hard for me to publish. I've had, a lot of difficulties in kind of pursing through. In some cases, I was invited, for instance, to give talks at CERN, and then that was canceled by the director of CERN when it was found out. And physicists that have talked about my work in their institution have been threatened to lose their job, and so on. So actually, I get a lot of emails and so on. I get a lot of people from inside the institution that are excited about what I'm doing, but they're unable to talk about it publicly.
Wow. So why do you think that is? Like, is there what are you presenting that could possibly be a threat to?
Well, it's normal when you change a paradigm of a way of thinking that's been present for over 100 years, and that's like very much, the prominent viewpoint, that is, it's going to take some oomph before things starts moving, so it's absolutely normal. It's just really difficult for the individual that has to undergo it. And it's nothing that you haven't seen in history. I mean, you look at all the big changes that have happened. Einstein had a lot of difficulties himself, and relativity would have stayed in the dark and probably would have not ever been considered if somebody like Planck, which came to his rescue and said, oh, no, we should look at this, didn't endorse him. When Max Planck endorsed Einstein, all of a sudden it started to be recognized, maybe there's some value here. Yeah, it really is really kind of fundamental to the way the universe is working, and in a way that is not like obvious. Meaning, like, you have ancient civilization and masters that have come throughout the ages that told us everything is one, everything is connected. If you do something over here, it affects something over there, and you might not notice, and all this stuff. But it's always stayed in philosophy and dogma, and faith. My equations kind of nailed this by actually, and I didn't do this on purpose. It's just when you solve these equations for the mass of proton, for instance, you find that all the information of all the other protons in the universe seem to be present inside one proton, right? So these little packets of energy, if each little Planck is one bit of information, you calculate how much there is inside the volume of a proton. These things are so small that you end up with the mass or the energy of all the other protons in the universe being present in one proton. You might say, well, how's that possible? Like, the proton doesn't weigh the mass of the universe. It doesn't. But that's because the amount of information that we're able to observe on the other side of the event horizon is a very, very, very small amount of the information. That's how I wrote the equation. I calculated how much could get past the surface, how much in relationship to the surface, and give the exact mass of the proton. So basically, the mass of the proton, the mass of matter, is actually, when we measure that, the source of mass is actually the relationship of the information of all the other things to that one thing that you're measuring.
Wow. So this kind of reminds me, or brings to mind, like, how if you have faith in a bigger force, I say God, I don't care, right? So it's like, you know, one can believe like God is everything, everywhere, in everything, in the biggest thing, in the tiniest part, is all over. So it's kind of like
the discovery of God.
yeah, in a scientific, like you said, it's
Right.
normally done through philosophy and dogma and stuff.
Right.
So it
Because
feels
when you
to
say
me-
the word God, it brings up a lot of different things for everybody.
yeah,
But generally, it's always described as omnipotent, omniscient, you know, omnipresent, and that's really what I'm describing. Is that this energy at the base of the structure of space-time is everywhere, and it connects everything.
yeah. So it's like you're actually not even saying that you've done it, like you're doing it. You've actually done it where you're bringing spirituality and science together.
Right. And actually showing that what we knew in terms of spirituality seemed to be correct, but not just in a philosophical way, it's actually the way things work. This actually how matter is created is because of that connection with all things, because every point contains the whole, because it's all one.
Our lives, our planet, how can we move forward with this that in a positive way, like for the conscious evolution of our humanity, of our planet? What implications are there?
Well, there's many implications. Like there's philosophical implications, social implication. For instance, you know, an implication that we're connected, you know, that everything is connected. Like that changes your output, your view on life. You know, the idea that actually you're in contact with a field of information all around you. You know, that changes things as well. But more importantly, or just as importantly, it changes the way we do things, because if there is this field of information, this field of energy everywhere, it's extremely high energy, it's very intense. The calculation shows that there's more energy in the centimeter of space than all the mass of the universe. So if we understand the mechanics and we tap into this network, we can extract massive amount of energy from, you know, very small amount of space, and power our whole planet for thousands of years. Or we can create gravitational effects that allows us to lift things off the surface, you know, and have space travel, and all these things. It has implication to health, you know, we're talking life prolongation, you know, all this stuff. It's remarkable. It will have an impact on everything we do.
We're tapping into something that really, if we go back in time, isn't so brand new. Is that correct?
That's right. It's actually been present, in fact, in ancient civilization from the research I've done. It's kind of strange the way I've done this whole path of mine. I actually studied ancient civilization as much as I studied physics in the earlier years. And you know, it is strange, because you'd think that these have no relationship with each other. But to give you an idea, I'm not the only one that's ever done that in science. Sir Isaac Newton had this same path where he thought, from what he gathered, that there was this knowledge about gravity was present in ancient civilization, and that if we could decode it, we would learn about it. And I had the same feeling from, you know, all the anomalies you find around the world. You know, where huge stones have been moved, like in some cases hundreds of miles. Stones that we couldn't even lift with some of the largest land crane on earth today, and certainly not, you know, over rivers and mountain range and desert and so on. And in some of the buildings that have incredible accuracy, you know, pyramids that have like 2,300,000 stone, you know, and at the end of the day, the apex is 1/4 of an inch off-centered from the base, which is 13 acres, I mean, these things are not things we can reproduce in modern time. So how was ancient civilization doing this, like 5,000 years ago or 6,000 years ago? In some cases, 10,000 years ago, 11,000 years ago. I mean, and so what was going on this planet? Well, when you look in these ancient civilizations, none of them claim to have done it themselves. All of them said that they got the information from sun gods that came from other star systems.
I feel like the information, these real deep truths, they did leave it for us to kind of, it's just I feel like we missed the mark. And part of it is with the sacred geometry, because could you speak a little bit about sacred geometry?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So these ancient civilizations that said they got this information, they left us all kinds of markers and symbols and traditions that to try to tell us about this. But you got to understand, if they got this from a very advanced civilization, it was way above their head. So they could only give us their interpretation of what was going on. And so it's kind of something you have to decode out of their symbolisms and out of their culture. But if you actually take the time to do that, you find that it's highly coherent around the whole planet. They all talked about this field of energy. You know, they called it mana, prana, you know, they had all kinds of chi, they had all kinds of names for it. They talked about that field of energy having a very specific geometric structure, and that it was the source of everything, and that if we could understand it, we could ascend like the sun gods. And I think when they meant ascend, they didn't just mean it in terms of like spiritual ascension. I think they meant it literally, that we could have control over gravity and get off the surface.
And what would be the benefits of having technology that gets us off this planet?
Well, okay. So if you look at our civilization, advanced, technological civilization that we have today is all the result of learning to control electromagnetic waves, right? Our cell phone, everything, and electricity, right? Magnetic, electricity, all this stuff powers all of our devices, and get us from one end of the planet to the other, combined with certain fuel. But if now for like the next step for evolution is to learn how to control gravitational waves, how to control, the next step, the deeper step of the electromagnetic waves, which is the gravitational wave, and that will change our civilization fundamentally. Why is it important? Because planetary surfaces are not safe place to hang around on. You can have, it's like the nest of a bird, it's cozy, it's good, it's a good place to be when the eggs are, needing incubation and hatching, and then for a little while with the birds in it. But if the birds try to stay in there too long, then there's not enough resources, there's not enough space for all of them, and eventually there's going to be a strong wind, and if they don't know how to fly, they're not going to survive, right? And so we need, as our population has grown, and as we have taken all this time, and the earth has been fairly stable for all this time, we need to know how to fly, because now we're pushing the probabilities of, all it takes is one sun flare in the right direction, strong enough, and it not that strong, the sun could produce that easy, and this, the atmosphere just burns out. And, Jupiter wouldn't even notice. It would be like, whoop, and then Jupiter would go, oh, what happened over there? And, and I'd be like, oh, that was Earth. It just lost its atmosphere, right? And it would be like that. And, and then just no more life on Earth. And so we have a timeline that, one asteroid that's big enough, and it doesn't have to be that big, the size of 2 football fields or so, compared to the Earth, that's not that big, and boom, you have like a serious wipeout event on the planet, if it lands into the atmosphere. It's actually remarkable that we're still here talking about it. When you look at the probabilities, when you look at all the things that could have happened to us, like in our lifetime, we saw comets, huge comets, hit the sun, like almost on a monthly basis. We've seen large comets hit Jupiter and make huge holes on the surface of Jupiter the size of the Earth, and so on. Like these, it's not so unusual that these events occur. The fact that the Earth is still here is a remarkable thing. The moon moves a little too far, gets hit by something and moves a little too far. Boom, there's water everywhere. So we have a limited amount of time, and any culture in the universe that makes it past our level of technology is a culture that learned to fly. And I'm not talking by burning fossil fuel, right? Because we ain't gonna make it to space that way. And so, eventually, a culture that's gonna make it has to learn to live in space. And when you control gravity, when you understand how gravity works, and you can control it, that becomes really doable. It becomes something you can easily do. You can easily build very large ships, and you could build ships the size of planets even. And you don't necessarily need to be in space. You could be in the atmosphere or so on. But as well, the result is that the Earth is given back to the Earth. All the cement comes off, all the pollution comes out, and all of a sudden the Earth regains its state of its natural state of harmony and health. So, all these things will change our civilization. And it's one discovery, how to control gravity, that will change all of the things we do.
And it's really interesting because the voices in my head. So what comes to mind is like, oh, but if God created a universe, whatever you want to call it, right? This is our home, so if it's going to end or if something's going to shift, then we're kind of meant to go with it. But then I think of, well, if we're eternal beings, if we are connected with the Alpha, the Mega, all of that, right? Then what is a home? It's like a child saying, I don't want to leave my house, right? And go and live on my own or go and live in another city. It's kind of so jarring because it's like...
I know, people say, but I don't want to leave the
Earth. Why would I want to go live on Jupiter? We should save Mother Earth, and we should. I love Mother Earth. But
but think about it, if we control gravitational field, then we can protect the Earth.
And shift that.
Yeah, because then if a meteorite's coming our way, boom, we put it in the tractor beam and move it over there so it doesn't hit the Earth, right? Or if there's a sun flare, we make a gravitational shield, boom, we make sure the sun flare doesn't hit the Earth, right? If we have this type of technology, now we can truly protect the Earth. And when we come to the surface, then the Earth is in good shape. It's not completely being riddled with pollution. It's not.
Which is what's up.
Yeah. So now it's the real garden. And when you look at the ancient civilization, prophecies, they talked about how if we could decode these codes, we would learn to fly, or we would ascend, and the Earth would return to its natural state.
Wow.
So I think that's actually what they were describing.
So it's not necessarily about finding these technologies and doing all of this so we can all move to Jupiter and other planets and live there forever and ever. It's actually, if it resonates with people and their mind opens to it, it can actually be it can be the factor that kind of saves Mother Earth. So it's not like we're abandoning her and saying, oh, you know what, sorry, we made a mess of you, we're going to go and set up somewhere else.
No.
It's twofold.
Yeah.
We might just go for a vacation there.
Right.
And then still be here, and this can still be our main home base. Like we still like to go back to our parents' house or family.
That's right.
Like, okay, so this can still be our home base.
And you don't want when you go back to your parents' house that it's like burning or, you know.
Yeah, because the condition is bad.
The condition is bad, and it's not going to get better because we're going to continue to be more and more people, and we're going to continue to need more and more resources. So the only solution is that we learn to control gravity. And it's critical. It's our path to ascension. It will change the consciousness of people.
Yeah.
You know, you get a completely different perspective. If you look, for instance, at all the psychology tests that were done on astronauts that got to see the Earth from space, they all got a completely different sense of themselves and the world from seeing, you know, how crazy it is that we put lines all over the continents and separated all the countries and that we, you know, fight around. Because when you look from space, it's like, wow, it's one big ball, we're all together on it, so why are we fighting, you know? And so it will change people. The consciousness of people will change fundamentally from being able to have access to space travel.
Addressing the gravity issue, is this what's happening over at the Resonance Project Foundation, or what are you doing over there? Is it like secret laboratory? What's going on?
We have laboratories and we work on hardware, but as well on theory.
Okay.
And yeah, you know, we are working on finding solutions and bringing them into the world, absolutely. And there's many other labs all around the world working on this at this point. And so, and what I'm talking to you about is not 3 generations from now. It will be in the next decade. So, you know, it's going to be a big change. Now, of course, it's not going to all happen at once. Maybe replacing jumbo jets, you know, at first, you know, so that before everybody has a gravitational car, you know. You see what I'm saying? It will integrate over time, but there's more and more labs around the world that are starting to get some result in being able to alter the structure of space-time.
Can you give us any like examples of some research findings or some results or like
yes, for instance, there's a device called the EM drive. The EM drive is basically a can. It was invented by a physicist in England. It's basically a can that is a cone. So it's a smaller diameter on one end, and it's very simple. There's a microwave emitter in here. Literally, you could grab a microwave emitter from your microwave oven and stick it in there, and you emit the microwave in such a way that they concentrate in the cone, on the front of the cone, and the result is that the device, it's plugged on both ends, right? The can starts to move in space. It starts to propel itself. It produced thrust. And the inventor, for over 10 years, couldn't get any other labs to test this device and confirm the effect, because they all said it violates the laws of motion, because the laws of motion says that you have to expel something one way to get the effect the other way. And you know, this thing doesn't expel anything, it just moves. And so, but finally, Sunny White at NASA decided to test it. And they've done multiple tests now over the last 2 years, and all have confirmed that this thing is moving on its own. Well, on its own. It's pushing against something. And NASA has concluded that it's pushing against that quantum field. It's called the vacuum fluctuation field that I was talking to you about as being the foundation of reality. So they are themselves coming to that conclusion. that you can push against this field that we were talking about to create propulsion. So, you know, this is an incredible thing because you don't put much energy in the device for it to move. So, you know, there is all sorts of different applications. So there's a lab in Finland, for instance, that has been spinning a superconductive disk. And they noticed somebody was smoking the pipe at night, late at night, you know, kind of like illegally because you're not supposed to smoke in the lab. And they noticed that their smoke over the device was going down. So they were wondering what's going on there. And they tried to figure out, you know, if it was air current or what was going on. And then they went to the second floor above it to like eliminate that. And it was still doing that. And, you know, the floor above it, and they realized they were creating some kind of gravitational beam. You know, this was actually in the 90s that this was discovered. They published it as gravitational shielding. That was the wrong terminology to use, and it upset all the physics community because you can't shield gravity. And so they said it was wrong, and it was most likely a hoax and all this. The physicists lost their job. They eventually got rehired a few years ago and continued the experiment. You know, in this case now they're shooting electrons at the beam to make it stronger, and when they do that, the beam becomes really strong. They can measure it 1.5 kilometers away, and when they measure it, they can measure how fast the electron traveled, 1.5 kilometers, and they travel at 64 times the speed of light.
Oh wow.
And this is published in mainstream physics journals, so it was verified.
Why does this stuff take so long for people to catch on to?
Well, because it's so esoteric. It's so outside of what people tend to be able to visualize or believe in, you know, that it just takes a long time for people to be able to catch up to it. It's like, you know, when we just had you remember those big phones?
Oh, yeah.
Right, with like the dial thing, and then with the tuk 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 tuk, you know, that thing. If I, you know, there's no way society would have gone from one of those to a smartphone.
So yeah.
It would have been too jarring, right?
Yeah.
So it took a long time for people to get used to, oh, you know, it doesn't have to have this huge cord attached to it, and it doesn't have to like go, you know. And now we got, you know, cordless phones, and then
the big cell phone.
yeah, then the big Motorola, you know, the big cell phone, and then eventually, you know, the flip phones, then eventually, you know, the iPhones, and then, you know, the smartphones. So it really. Yeah, it's hard to make the transition. And the scientific community has a really hard time. There's a lot of politics. There's a lot of, and it has a really hard time overcoming their own obstacles that they put in there. Like, because there's a lot of closed-minded physicists out there. They're not willing to look at things that they haven't learned in a book, right? Well, innovation is not going to be in a book, because if it was known, then it wouldn't be innovation. And so there's only a very small amount of physicists that are actually able to go there. So it takes a long time for the physics community and the scientific community to actually accept new ideas. And certainly if they're really, you know, extreme ideas, like all of a sudden, you know, gravitational beams that are moving things at 64 times the speed of light, is pretty hard pill for a physicist to swallow. But the fact is that these things are occurring. So we started a residence academy, and the delegate program is like a comprehensive 12-week program with all the information on the whole theory, what it means, all easy to understand. Anybody can do it. My 10-year-old did it. My friends, kids do it. I mean, it's a remarkable program, and it has. You can go as deep as you want, or you can stay on the surface, and you get all the references. So when you talk to your friends, you say, "Oh yeah, did you know about this?" And they go, "Oh no, that's not true." Then you go, "Okay, here's a reference. You go and check it out yourself." These things help a lot. But as well, everybody has taken the course, and now thousands of people have taken it from over 40 different countries. They all report being completely transformed after having taken it, because their worldview is completely changed.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, is the worldview and the perception and the expanding the mindset, right? Because it's one thing, okay, I should be loving and treat my neighbor the same as myself, and these principles that are based in our oneness that have come through Dharma and so on. Now, like, you can go and learn some stuff that you understand why and how it works, that we are one and we are connected. So if I harm, I'm really harming. You know what I mean? Like how it all is interrelated. So it is, I think it's very, very important. Okay, I know we're kind of running out of time. I could sit here and talk to you for a very long time. Is there anything that you'd like to just quickly touch on or share that I missed out that you think is important to?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand. At the end of the day, we don't need to know all the details, but they need to know that they're participating in a field of information, and that they are connected, that you're never isolated, that the universe is talking through them, through the trillions of protons they're made of. There are 100 trillion cells in your body, approximately 100 trillion atoms per cell, right? And so that's 100 trillion by 100 trillion. So that's a lot of complexity. And this is very much, part of a mechanism that is part of the whole. And so you're interacting with this field of information, you're interacting with the whole, and it's talking to you. And it's critical to be able to listen and to be able to feed information back in a very powerful way, so that we can be the best that we can be and make the most difference in the world. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I truly, truly appreciate the time you've taken to sit down.
It's my pleasure.
With me. And I'll put some information on the website and so on up when I post this as well. And thank you so much for watching. This has been Expanding Consciousness with your host, myself, Anjula.